The phone won't stop ringing. My hand shakes as I reach for it, and the bruise on my shoulder screams where I hit the kitchen counter going down. 3 days. It's been 3 days since Christmas Eve, and I'm sitting in my old lazy boy with an ice pack pressed against my ribs, watching Brian's name light up my screen for the 12th time today. My name is Carl Anderson. I'm 67 years old. I'm a retired mechanical engineer, Navy veteran, and until 3 days ago, I thought I knew my son. I should let it go to voicemail. My lawyer, Gary Peterson, told me not to answer. The restraining order paperwork sits on my coffee table next to Patricia's old reading glasses, waiting for my signature. But my thumb hits the green button before my brain catches up. Dad. His voice cracks through the speaker. Not the confident, dismissive tone from Christmas night when he told me I was just a bitter old man living in the past. This voice shakes. This voice knows. Dad, did you pay the mortgage this month? The question hangs in the air like smoke from my old workshop. Outside my window, snow covers the driveway where I used to teach Brian how to change oil in my '78 Camaro, back when he was 16 and still listened to his old man. Why would you think I paid your mortgage? I keep my voice steady, calm. Same tone I used when he was 8 and lied about breaking Mrs. Johnson's window with his baseball. Silence. Then he exhales hard, that sound crackling through the phone. Because the payment didn't go through, our account shows insufficient funds. And I know you've helped us before when we were short. Helped, that's what he calls it now. I shift in my chair, and pain shoots through my side, where his shove sent me into the granite counter. The ER doctor at Seattle General said I was lucky nothing broke. Just severe bruising, he'd said, studying the x-rays. Deep tissue damage that would take weeks to heal. Maybe longer at my age. I'm confused, Brian, I say, watching the snow fall outside. 3 nights ago you told me I was hoarding money I didn't need. You said what I did with my savings wasn't my business anymore. The silence stretches long. I can picture him in that kitchen with the marble countertops I helped pay for 5 years ago when they bought the house. His face cycling through emotions, panic, realization. The same look he had when he was 15, and I caught him sneaking back in at 3 a.m. Dad, listen. No, you listen. My voice stays soft, but there's steel underneath now. Steel that wasn't there before Christmas Eve. Your gambling debts aren't my problem anymore, son. I hear Michelle in the background, her voice sharp, worried. She's asking what's happening, if I'm really not going to help them. The police have photos, Brian, I continue. The bank has records of every forged signature. My lawyer has documentation of the $30,000 you stole using my veteran benefits information. The line goes quiet, except for his breathing. You know what? Let me back up. Tell you how we got here. I spent 35 years designing aircraft engines for Boeing. Before that, 8 years in the Navy working on submarine systems. I'm not a complicated man. I believe in hard work, keeping your word, and taking care of family. When my wife Patricia died of cancer 5 years ago, she left me with a $180,000 life insurance policy and a simple request. Make sure Brian was okay. I thought I was doing right by him. I helped with the house down payment, $40,000 from Patricia's insurance money. When his transmission died 2 years later, I covered the $3,500 repair. Credit card debt, car payments, that expensive vacation to Hawaii Michelle wanted for their anniversary. I kept helping because that's what fathers do, right? Brian worked in marketing for some tech company downtown, made decent money, or so I thought. He drove a BMW, wore expensive suits, lived in a house worth $650,000. From the outside, everything looked successful. But you know how it is. Sometimes the shiniest cars have the worst engines underneath. I should have seen the signs. The way he started asking for money more often. how he'd get defensive when I asked about his finances. The times I'd call, and Michelle would answer, saying Brian was out with clients at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. Who has client meetings that late? The discovery came by accident. Last September, I was helping them move some furniture from their garage to make room for Michelle's new car. Brian's laptop was sitting open on his workbench, and the screensaver had timed out. When I jiggled the mouse to close it properly, I saw browser tabs still open. FanDuel, DraftKings, some poker site called PokerStars, and bank statements showing withdrawals I didn't recognize. Here's the thing. I'm an engineer. We're trained to notice details that don't add up. Those numbers didn't make sense with what I knew about their finances. I didn't say anything that day, just filed it away in my mind like I used to do with technical problems at Boeing. Gather all the data first, then analyze. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my credit union. Someone had tried to open a line of credit using my social security number and veteran ID information. The application was denied because they called to verify, but it had my signature. My exact signature, down to the little loop I make on the C in Carl. That's when I started digging deeper. I pulled my credit report and found 3 inquiries I hadn't authorized. I checked my mail more carefully and realized some of my bank statements had gone missing. Then I found a copy of my DD-214, my military discharge papers, in Brian's car when I borrowed it to go to the VA clinic. You want to know what really got me? The veteran loan applications. Brian had applied for a $25,000 home improvement loan using my military service record as collateral. These loans are meant to help vets who served their country, not fund their children's gambling habits. I spent the next 3 weeks building a case like I used to prepare technical reports at Boeing. Methodical, thorough, undeniable. Gathered bank records, saved the browser history from that laptop, photographed documents. Every engineer knows you double-check your calculations before you submit the final design. By November, I had the full picture. Brian hadn't just applied for one veteran loan. He'd tried 4 different lenders, using variations of my service record. 2 got denied, but 2 went through. That's where the $30,000 went, straight from veteran assistance programs into his gambling accounts. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was realizing how long he'd been planning this. I found email printouts in his home office when I was fixing their computer, correspondence with loan officers dating back 8 months. He'd been researching my benefits, my service history, my financial information like he was preparing for a heist. You know what really got under my skin? The details he knew. My submarine service dates, my rank at discharge, even which battles my unit participated in. Information I'd shared with him over family dinners. Proud father showing off his military service to his son. He'd been taking notes, storing it all away for when he needed it. I also discovered the gambling was worse than I thought. Much worse. Brian owed money to at least 3 different online platforms, plus some local poker games that weren't exactly legal. The total debt looked to be around $75,000. The $30,000 he'd stolen from me was just the beginning. Michelle knew. I found texts on an old phone they'd asked me to recycle. Messages between them about Dad's money and the vet loans. She wasn't the mastermind, but she sure wasn't innocent either. One message from her said, "Just get what you can, and we'll figure out the rest later." December came around, and I made a decision. Christmas Eve, I'd invite them over like always. Make Patricia's famous pot roast, set the table nice, do everything normal. Then I'd lay out the evidence and give them one chance to explain, apologize, and make this right. Some part of me, the father part that raised this boy from diapers to college graduation, still hoped there was an explanation. Maybe he was in real trouble. Maybe someone was threatening him. Maybe there was a reason good enough to justify stealing from his old man. Here's the thing about hope. Sometimes it's the cruelest emotion of all. Christmas Eve morning, I got up early and cooked all day. Pot roast with carrots and potatoes, the way Patricia used to make it. Mashed potatoes with real butter and cream. Green bean casserole from scratch. Not that stuff with the canned soup. Apple pie with a lattice crust that took me 2 hours to get right. I was in that kitchen for 8 hours, preparing a meal for people who'd been robbing me blind for months. But that's what you do for family, right? Even when they don't deserve it. They showed up at 6 p.m. sharp. Brian seemed jumpy, kept checking his phone every few minutes. Michelle complained about the traffic, about her job-cutting holiday bonuses, about everything except asking how I was doing. Neither of them noticed the folder sitting on my sideboard, right next to Patricia's good china. We ate mostly in silence. Brian wolfed down his food like he hadn't eaten in days. Michelle picked at hers, making small talk about their neighbors and some TV show I'd never heard of. Normal conversation, like we were a normal family having a normal Christmas Eve dinner. After we finished eating, I stood up and got the folder. "I need to show you both something," I said, setting it on the dining room table next to the half-empty wine bottle. Brian's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "What's that, Dad?" I opened the folder and spread out the documents. Bank statements, credit applications, copies of forged signatures, printouts of gambling website transactions. This represents $30,000 worth of theft from my accounts over the past 8 months. The silence in that room was deafening. You could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, the one Patricia's father gave us for our 25th wedding anniversary. Michelle set down her wine glass. Hard. The sound echoed off the dining room walls. "Someone's been using my identity to get loans," I continued, "using my veteran status, my social security number, my signature, and that someone is sitting at this table." Brian's face went through every color in the spectrum, white as the tablecloth, then red as the wine, then white again. "Dad, you're confused," he said, but his voice shook. "You probably authorized these and forgot. Memory problems are common at your age." There it was, the gaslighting Michelle had warned him to use in one of those text messages. Make the old man think he's losing his mind. "I'm 67, not senile," I said. "And I have security footage from the bank showing you depositing checks from these fraudulent loans. I have browser history from your computer showing the gambling sites. I have text messages between you and Michelle discussing Dad's money." Michelle went pale. "You read our private messages?" "You asked me to wipe that old phone for recycling. I saw everything." The mask was starting to slip. Brian pushed back from the table, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under, the debts, the people calling me." "What people?" "Guys who don't take no for an answer. They know where we live, Dad. They know where Michelle works." For a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered those loan applications with my forged signature. "How much do you owe?" I asked. Brian looked at Michelle. She shook her head slightly. "It doesn't matter," he said finally. "What matters is you have more money than you need. Mom left you $180,000. You live in a paid-off house. What are you saving it all for?" "For my medical expenses. My future care. Your mother and I saved for 40 years. For what?" Brian stood up, his voice getting louder. "So you can hoard it until you die? At least I'm using it for something important. Stealing from your father is important." That's when his face changed completely. The son I'd raised, the boy who used to help me in the garage, the kid who cried when Old Yeller died, that person vanished. What was left was a stranger. "You owe me," he said, and his voice was cold now. Different. "I'm your only son. Everything you have should be mine anyway. I was just speeding up the process." I stood up from my chair, my hands shaking, not from fear, from anger. pure, clean anger like I hadn't felt since my Navy days. "Get out of my house." "Gladly." But instead of leaving, he stepped closer. "You know what your problem is, old man? You're stuck in the past. Honor, duty, all that military garbage. The world doesn't work that way anymore." "It works exactly that." "Way in my house," I said. "Actions have consequences. You stole from me, and now you're going to pay it back or face the police." That's when he lost it completely. Brian shoved me with both hands, right in the chest. I'm not a small man. Even at 67, I stay in decent shape from all the work in my garage. But he caught me off guard, and I stumbled backward into the kitchen counter. My hip caught the granite edge. Pain shot through my side like electricity. I tried to catch myself, but my feet slipped on Patricia's old kitchen rug, the one she'd bought at that craft fair in Spokane 20 years ago. The floor came up fast. My head bounced off the hardwood with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. Everything went white for a second, then fuzzy around the edges. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard Michelle scream. "Jesus, Brian, what did you do?" I lay there staring at my dining room ceiling, at the light fixture Patricia and I had picked out together when we first bought this house. Blood ran down my temple, warm and sticky. I could taste copper in my mouth. Brian's face appeared above me, twisted with something between panic and rage. "This is your fault," he said, his voice shaking now. "You pushed me to this. If you'd just been reasonable, if you'd just helped us like family is supposed to do." Michelle was crying, saying something about calling an ambulance, but Brian grabbed her arm. "We're leaving, now." "We can't just leave him. Watch me." And they did. They stepped over me like I was a piece of furniture and walked out. I heard the front door slam, the BMW engine start up, tires squealing on the wet pavement outside. I don't know how long I lay on that kitchen floor. Long enough for the pot roast to get cold. Long enough for my vision to clear. When I finally tried to sit up, every muscle in my body screamed. Here's the thing about being 67 and hitting a hardwood floor. Everything hurts twice as much and takes twice as long to heal. I crawled to the wall phone, the old landline Patricia insisted we keep for emergencies. Funny how she knew we'd need it someday. 911, what's your emergency? I need help, I said, my voice cracking. I've been assaulted by my son. The dispatcher's voice went sharp and professional. Are you in immediate danger? Is the attacker still present? No, they left, but I'm hurt. I'm bleeding. Paramedics are on the way, sir. Stay on the line with me. The EMTs arrived in 8 minutes. 2 young guys, Steve and Marcus, couldn't have been much older than Brian. They were gentle, professional, asked all the right questions while checking my pupils and taking my blood pressure. Sir, do you want to go to the hospital? Steve asked. I did. Not just for the medical care, but for the documentation, the photos, the records, the paper trail that would prove what happened. Seattle General's ER was busy for Christmas Eve. Lots of accidents, people drinking too much, families fighting. I wasn't the only senior citizen who'd been hurt by relatives that night. That's a sad thought, isn't it? Dr. Jennifer Martinez was the attending physician. Young woman, maybe 35, with kind eyes and steady hands. She stitched up the gash on my temple, ordered x-rays of my ribs and hip, diagnosed a mild concussion. You're lucky, she said, showing me the x-ray films. Severe bruising, but no fractures. Though at your age, this kind of trauma can take months to heal completely. The police came while I was still in the hospital. Officer Rodriguez, older guy, probably close to retirement himself, had seen cases like this before. Elder abuse is more common than people think, he told me, even when it's family, especially when it's family. I gave him everything. The folder full of financial documents, the whole story about the gambling debts and forged signatures, my statement about what happened during dinner. He took photos of my injuries, got copies of the medical records. You pressing charges? He asked. Yes. No hesitation. No guilt about what this would mean for Brian's career, his marriage, his future. Just certainty. Good, Rodriguez said. These cases only get worse if you don't stop them. The investigation took 6 weeks. Detective Kim kept me updated, a sharp woman in her 40s who specialized in financial crimes. She said identity theft cases involving veterans were federal matters, which meant the FBI got involved too. They arrested both of them on February 14th, Valentine's Day, if you can believe that. Brian for identity theft, elder financial abuse, and assault. Michelle as an accomplice in the financial crimes. The local newspaper ran a story. Marketing executive charged in veteran father abuse case. Brian's photo was right there on page 3, the same smile he'd worn at his college graduation. His employer fired him the day after the arrest. Michelle's insurance company put her on administrative leave pending the outcome of the trial. Their house went into foreclosure within 2 months. I felt exactly nothing when I heard all this. No satisfaction, no regret. Just the quiet knowledge that actions have consequences. The trial started in April and lasted 5 days. I testified on day 3, told my story to a jury of 12 strangers. Brian's lawyer tried to paint me as a confused old man who'd authorized the loans and forgotten about them, but I had documentation, security footage, medical records from Christmas Eve. The jury took 4 hours to reach their verdict. When they came back, the foreman stood up, a guy about my age with gray hair and work-worn hands. He looked like someone who'd understand what it means to have your trust broken by family. On the count of identity theft, we find the defendant, Brian Anderson, guilty. Brian's shoulders sagged, like someone had cut the strings holding him up. On the count of elder financial abuse, we find the defendant, Brian Anderson, guilty. Michelle started crying in the gallery behind him. Quiet tears, not the dramatic kind. On the count of assault and battery, we find the defendant, Brian Anderson, guilty. That's when Brian broke down completely. Real tears, his whole body shaking. For a second, he looked like the little boy I used to comfort after nightmares. But you know what? I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sadness, just the quiet knowledge that justice had been served. The judge sentenced him to 18 months in federal prison for the identity theft and financial crimes, plus 6 months county time for the assault. Michelle got 12 months probation and 200 hours of community service as an accomplice. They were ordered to pay full restitution, $30,000 plus interest and legal fees. Total came to about $47,000. Brian served 14 months, got out early for good behavior. Michelle filed for divorce after 3 months. Their marriage lasted about as long as it took for the house to go into foreclosure. Here's what I did while my son was in prison. First, I joined the VA support group that meets every Thursday at the community center on Pine Street. Bunch of guys my age, all dealing with different kinds of family problems. Turns out I wasn't the only one who'd been taken advantage of by relatives. There's Jerry, whose daughter cleaned out his savings for drugs. Mike, whose son-in-law forged his name on a reverse mortgage. Tom, whose nephew used his credit cards to start a business that went belly up in 6 months. We don't spend much time feeling sorry for ourselves. Mostly we talk about moving forward, staying strong, helping each other spot the warning signs before things get bad. Second, I started mentoring young veterans through the local VFW, teach them basic car repair in my garage, help them with job applications, show them how to build credit the right way. These kids come back from deployment with skills, but no idea how civilian life works. Last month, a 24-year-old Marine named Kevin asked me how to handle his brother, asking for money all the time. Set boundaries, I told him while we were changing the oil in his pickup truck. Love doesn't mean being someone's personal ATM. But he's family, Kevin said. So was my son. Family that steals from you isn't really family. They're just people who happen to share your DNA. Kevin nodded, like that made sense. Sometimes the younger generation gets it faster than us old-timers. Third, I got back to real work in my shop. Built a dining table for my neighbor's daughter. She's getting married next spring. Solid oak, dovetail joints, the kind that'll last 50 years if you take care of it. Good, honest work that my hands remember even when my heart feels broken. Brian got out of prison last month. I heard through Gary Peterson, my lawyer, that he's living in a studio apartment near the airport. Works for a package delivery service making about $15 an hour. Michelle moved back to her parents' place in Tacoma. He hasn't called to apologize, hasn't asked how I'm doing, or if I need anything. The only time my phone rings with his number is when he needs money. Like today, asking about a mortgage payment for a house he lost over a year ago. Dad, please, he'd said during that call. Just this once. They're threatening eviction. No, I told him. What do you mean, no? I mean, no, I won't give you money. I won't enable your choices anymore. You're 45 years old, Brian. Figure it out yourself. You're really going to let your only son become homeless? Here's the thing, and this is important for anyone listening who's been in my situation. I looked out my window at the snow falling on Patricia's garden, and I said something I never thought I'd say. You're not my son anymore. My son died on Christmas Eve when he put his hands on his father and left him bleeding on the kitchen floor. I hung up and turned off my phone. The snow kept falling, covering everything clean and white. In my workshop, I had a rocking chair, half finished for my neighbor's new granddaughter. The wood smelled like cedar and possibility. You know what I realized? Sitting there in my quiet house with the phone finally silent? I'd spent 45 years raising a boy who grew up to be a stranger. I'd enabled, excused, and funded his bad choices until he felt entitled to steal from me. And when I finally said no, he tried to hurt me. That's not love. That's not family. That's just toxicity wearing a familiar face. At the VA group this week, I told the guys about hanging up on Brian. How do you feel about it? Jerry asked. Free, I said. And I meant it. To anyone out there dealing with family who takes advantage, whether it's money, guilt, or just your basic kindness, let me tell you something. You don't owe anyone access to your life just because you share blood. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Your worth was never measured by how much you could give or how much abuse you could take. It was always in your character, your integrity, your willingness to do what's right, even when it hurts. I'm 67 years old. I served my country for 8 years and worked honest jobs for 35 more. I raised a son who turned into a thief and an abuser. But I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a man who chose himself, who set boundaries, who said no when it mattered. The phone stays off. The snow keeps falling. And tomorrow, I'll get back to work in my shop, building something good with these old hands. Because that's what we do. We endure. We rebuild. We carry on. The hardest lesson in life isn't learning to forgive those who hurt you. It's learning to stop giving them new opportunities to do it again. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't holding on to toxic family members, but having the courage to let them face the consequences of losing you.